Marker. And action.
This is Behind the Bells, the show that takes you behind the magic of your favorite Christmas movies and shows. Within the background of every Santa Claus, reindeer, and stocking is a story. Where did it come from? Our Christmas movie expert will unravel all of that and give you the full story. Sit back and enjoy another episode with Robert Nicholas.
Merry Monday, everyone, and welcome to Behind the Bells. I'm your host, Robert Nicholas, and I'll be taking you on another one-horse open sleigh ride into the world of Christmas movies. Well, folks, July is in full force, summer's here, so you know what that means. We are in the middle of Christmas in July. And yeah, I know that we are past the 25th, but I did want to provide a unique episode in occasion of this, considering that I have not yet done another special Christmas in July episode, aside from our other deep dives that I've gone through before. Now I hope that all of your Julys have been just as nice. I mean, mine's been pretty good so far, as I took my fiance and I up to the mountains here in California, where we, of course, enjoyed some fireworks, some hot dogs, some 4th of July movies as well. I'm sure I'll have to do a list on that at some point, though I think my favorite still happens to be The Sandlot. Other than that, we've also taken a few beach trips around here, and I've also been trying to get as much of my notes done as possible for my upcoming Part 2 episode of Elf, even though I am sure you are all still waiting for that one. And I do want to address that yes, I am going to be getting out Elf Part 2 in the next couple of weeks or so, but I also just really wanted to apologize for just how slow my process has been getting episodes out. And even though when I started the show back in 2020, I, in my own mindset, had thought I could get an episode out every week, but that's proven to be a lot harder than I thought, because I do need a lot of my material, well, just in front of me, just so I can ensure that I can refer to it and make sure that I have accuracy, in addition to putting together my clips, my music, because I really wanted to ensure you just great episodes every time. Now, I bet you're also wondering whether I'm implying I'm going to end my show. Of course not. I wouldn't even think of ending the show because I love doing this podcast. I love telling you the stories of all these movies and the people who made them. So, as I've said, of course we're going to have a part 2 on Elf. I also wanted to talk about some of my plans for my other episodes. So, yes, I'm sure you longtime listeners know that I've covered a variety of Nickelodeon-based shows and their Christmas specials. And yes, I am going to be continuing on those as well, with my next one being Hey Arnold, but I know there's a whole bunch out there, including the Fairly Odd Parents, the Wild Thornberrys, the SpongeBob ones. I haven't even gotten around to covering the Hanukkah episodes of Rugrats yet. So, there's a lot of material from that I do want to cover. But I also have some new segments that are going to be coming on my show. One of them being called Almost Christmas, which are going to be a bit more freeform, where I don't exactly go into their full stories, but these would be movies that aren't necessarily Christmas movies in their own right, but at least have a little bit of Christmas within the story that would actually give me permission to talk about them on this show. So, like maybe Rambo First Blood would be an example, or maybe While You Were Sleeping, if you do count that as a Christmas movie or so. But those episodes I feel like I could get out on a much more consistent basis and don't necessarily have to do a ton of research for, other than just my own thoughts on it. Another segment I also want to introduce is something called Christmas What? Christmas What would essentially allow me to also dive in to some of the worst Christmas movies and the worst specials around. And what's funny is that I'm actually going to be talking about one of them on this episode. But for now, you can at least gather your own thoughts on what you think might be some of the worst specials or movies out there, and I do want to cover it with a Christmas bend. So, my other plan with all that in mind, the Nickelodeon segments, the two-parters, the Almost Christmas, and the Christmas What? That I'm hoping to get out on a much more consistent basis, so from this point on, each episode, instead of being as random as they are, I'm really going to try to get them out every 2 weeks to ensure that I do have something for you as consistent as it can. Plus, this will also allow me to get more time in to do my research on whatever I'm doing for my two-parters, as I still want to keep doing them. I've got a couple of projects in line for the holidays all set up, so be sure to get ready for that. But with that in mind, I didn't want to leave you high and dry this July, but I also wanted to give you something that was also Christmassy and somewhat summer-based. So, what I wanted to do was to create my own top 10 Christmas movies for the summer. Now, what does that really mean? Well, these are movies that could either be full-fledged Christmas movies, or at least have some kind of Christmas into the background that you feel like you could watch during the summer without it feeling kind of weird. Because let's face it, if you're as much of a Christmas nut as I am, you're going to want to get some of that Christmas magic to really offset the summer heat and everything that comes with that. But of course, whenever I tried putting on something unique, like Miracle on 34th Street, or even The Nightmare Before Christmas, there's something about that feels kind of weird. So I decided to really set out just to see exactly what kind of other holiday stories could work when watched during the summer. So, with that in mind, let's go ahead and dive into my list. Number 10. Catch Me If You Can. Two little mice fall into a bucket of cream. One drowned and the other kicked hard enough until he turned the cream into butter. This odd story you've probably heard from comes from the father of the main character, Frank Abagnale Jr., played by Leonardo DiCaprio, in Catch Me If You Can. Based on the story by the same man that we now know was mostly made up, we focus on how this teenage kid managed to impersonate a pilot, a doctor, and a lawyer, and also stole millions of dollars. DiCaprio and Tom Hanks are fun to watch as young Frank and FBI agent Carl Hanratty play this fun cat and mouse game for nearly a decade. While this is a fun Steven Spielberg chase story, a lot of the significant moments with Frank really happen around Christmas, from his phone calls to Carl to his return to America after being captured. They show Frank's vulnerability and how much Christmas can both feel the closest to family and yet the loneliest for those who have nowhere to go. Frank spends the movie trying to find a way to get his divorced parents back together, only for him to keep growing as his con becomes more and more out of control. The movie is now nearly 20 years old as of 2023, and still manages to be a lot of fun, even if the world was conned into believing Frank's story was true. Even if we were duped, that still makes Frank a good storyteller. And isn't that what con artists are supposed to be good at? Making it up as they go? Well, regardless, Catch Me If You Can is a steal of a story that left me happy. Number 9. Rocky IV. You'd be surprised by how many of the Rocky movies have the Christmas season as a setting. The first movie's ice rink date scene is set around Thanksgiving. The fifth movie shows the family watching Christmas Vacation. But fascinatingly, the most unique of the movies does register as a Christmas movie, as the final match is set on December 25th. Rocky IV is a fun movie, even if it is an odd one within the series. The first Rocky was meant to showcase a rough and tough underdog, played by Sylvester Stallone, in a gritty, realistic Philadelphia, and the sequels mostly follow the same trajectory. Rocky IV has Rocky Balboa winning the Cold War. Okay, there's more to that. It's more like a revenge western as Rocky's friend Apollo Creed gets killed by Soviet boxer Ivan Drago, played by Dolph Lundgren, and Rocky wants to avenge him. A lot would argue that this tone, that also includes a lot of 80s songs and even a robot, is a little out of touch. Way out of touch. I mean, this shouldn't work and should have been the movie that killed the series. So, first of all, we'd have to wait for Rocky V to ruin the series in 1990. Second, Rocky IV makes it clear from the start that this is going to be the blockbuster of the series. The second scene in the movie is a birthday where the robot is a present for Paulie. I can understand if some people look at that moment with disgust. I can't help but laugh in a good way. Later when Apollo has his match with Drago, we even get a James Brown cameo at that scene. But I wouldn't go as far to count this as a full comedy. It does allow itself a lot of moments to take itself seriously, from the grieving of Apollo's death to Rocky knowing he'll be in the Soviet Union to retaliate for his friend. The Christmas scenes are mostly on the fight, but we do see Rocky's son Robert back home with his friends and the robot rooting for his dad. It looks like that they had just enjoyed the Christmas morning and wanted to cap it off to see if their dad can defeat this Soviet. I'd be lying if I said that this was my favorite of the bunch, but Rocky IV is entertaining. You have to go in knowing that given this kind of fame that Stallone had in 1985, this was the only kind of Rocky movie that could have been made at this point. But as a Christmas movie for the summer, it's gonna fly now. Number 8. Gremlins. I was on the fence about putting this up here as I do associate Gremlins more as a genuine Christmas movie than just a movie with Christmas in it. But it was released back in the summer in 1984, and I even went to a drive-in screening back in July of 2020 during the pandemic, so I do think there is a lot of people that do see Gremlins as a summer Christmas movie. I think a lot of that has to do with because it still follows the beat-by-beat play of a 1950s monster B movie with a Christmas bend. A father finds a cute creature in a Chinese goods shop and purchases him as a present for his son Billy, played by Zach Galligan. He's also given the rules of no exposure to bright lights, no water exposure, and not to feed him after midnight. This, of course, goes wrong, and the town becomes a playground for the gremlins that just want to have a party. Yeah, unlike a lot of other monster movies where there would be a high body count, the monsters here are more or less troublemakers. They drink, they drive, they flash themselves, and they even raid a movie theater just to watch Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. For many kids, this was their first descent into horror, and Gremlins is a good one to do so. It's almost like watching what would happen if the most immature boys of all time went on a rampage. Yes, we do want to see Billy and Gizmo stop the madness, but admit it, a part of you really wants to join in on the madness. Not the killing, but just the having fun part. Even if that part doesn't appeal to you, the human element is just as engaging. I like how this small town is like a mix of Bedford Falls from It's a Wonderful Life with a goofy B-movie style. The residents are all memorable, and Billy makes for a vulnerable but likable hero. He's not a hunter or even really that smart, but it's his love for his family and the protection of Gizmo that keeps him going. Director Joe Dante crafted a spooky family film that pushed the PG rating so far that it actually caused the MPPA to create the PG-13 rating. But it's more fun spooky than anything. Give this another watch and you'll see why this definitely feels more like a summer movie. Just keep an eye for monsters in the kitchen. Number 7. Edward Scissorhands. Keeping the dark theme in tune, this Tim Burton fairy tale is Florida set for most of the movie, which makes this a perfect summer candidate. It even has a lot of the tropes of summer, including barbecues, outdoor parties, camping, waterbeds, and people hanging in the suburbs. Though a lot of that is to showcase how vanilla the lives of everyone were before this Frankenstein monster-like boy was discovered. Edward Scissorhands was a movie that I didn't watch till high school, and that was probably for the best. Not because there was anything inappropriate about the story or the character, but because this was in a lot of ways the original teenage romance with a gothic edge, at least before the Twilight series came along and ruined that. No joke, you'd be surprised by how much time is spent with his connection with the family's teenage daughter Kim, played by Winona Ryder. She and Edward, played by Johnny Depp, take their time to build that spark until it becomes a forbidden romance. There's a lot of sweetness to it, especially once we get to the famous ice carving scene. It's visual poetry as we see Edward using the scissors to create another animal, while the shaven ice turns into falling snow for Kim, as we hear the ballet-like music from Danny Elfman. I'm surprised that we don't see this on a lot more lists covering the holidays and romance. By adding that along with the Florida Christmas atmosphere, there is something more magical with the addition of the snow. Edward Scissorhands works best if you don't think too hard about the logical nature of the situation. A family being so accepting of someone very bizarre, a teenager falling in love with it, a suburban mob wanting to destroy the monster, and even a final fight at a gothic castle. Tim Burton clearly wanted to craft his own kind of Disney fantasy, which I guess means this may now be a Disney fairy tale now that the company owns 20th Century Fox. With Christmas only coming in towards the last third of the movie, Edward Scissorhands may actually benefit by watching in the summer. Number 6. Batman Returns. I had to include at least one superhero movie, and it makes sense, we're going from one Tim Burton movie to another, so why not showcase the Caped Crusader? Batman Returns takes us back to winter to focus on the Penguin, played by Danny DeVito. There's little point in describing the character from the comics, as Tim Burton completely rewrote and redesigned him for another gothic tale of a tragic monster. But unlike Edward Scissorhands, who's much more sympathetic, the Penguin also has a baby-killing plot in tow, along with causing chaos in Gotham around the Christmas season. So he's someone that we want Batman, played by Michael Keaton, to take down, in addition to the new femme fatale in town, Catwoman, played by Michelle Pfeiffer. Calling this a Christmas movie is a far stretch in my book. Yes, we see a lot of the Christmas decorations, and the first action scene really takes place at a tree lighting ceremony, but it takes a backseat to the more superhero premise of fighting evil and having justice served. But Batman Returns is so fun. You can tell that Tim Burton had more fun making this the second time around as you get more of the weird movie style of his, and I mean weird. From the Red Triangle Circus Gang as minions, to a mobile duck vehicle, to cats resurrecting a murdered woman, you just have to ask yourself, just how much of a Batman movie is this? But if you were to ask fans like myself, we'd answer, I don't know, but who cares? This movie is an example where the style itself can really suck in an audience and still deliver something awesome. The action is still there, and it's a lot funnier than I remembered. You can tell that Michael Keaton, Danny DeVito, and Michelle Pfeiffer all had a ball playing these characters and just rolling with the story that was called for. Batman finding clowns? Check. Penguin biting off the nose of a political consultant? Check. Catwoman eating a caged bird? Check. The bat signal is definitely lit tonight for some bat action. Just add a few Christmas lights to that, and you've got a blockbuster Christmas in the summer.
What's up, dudes? I'm Jerry D of Totally Rad Christmas, the podcast that talks all things Christmas in the 80s. Toys, movies, specials, music, books, fashion, and fads.
If it was gnarly during Christmas in the 80s, he's got it covered. Wait, is there a lot of things to talk about for the 80s and Christmas?
Well, you got the movie giants like Christmas Vacation, Scrooged, and A Christmas Story. There are TV specials like Muppet Family Christmas, Claymation Christmas Celebration, and a Garfield Christmas special.
Plus classics shown every year.
You also jam out to Last Christmas, Do They Know It's Christmas, and Christmas in Hollis. But most of all, it was a time for the most bodacious, best-selling Christmas toys ever, like He-Man, G.I. Joe, Transformers,
And Cabbage Patch Kids.
Yes, them too. We cover them all, plus much more, including standard segments like Hap Hap Happiest Memory, Gag Me with the Spoon, The Other Half of the Battle,
And Chant with the Littles.
So tune in to Totally Rad Christmas everywhere you get your podcasts. Turn the clock back and dive into those warm and fuzzy memories.
Later, dudes.
And now back to the show with our Christmas movie expert, Robert Nicholas.
Number 5. Holiday Inn. I've already done an extensive two-parter covering the history of the Irving Berlin musical with Bing Crosby and Fred Astaire, so you can go there for the behind-the-scenes story. But here's a quick premise. Jim, played by Bing Crosby, is getting ready to retire his nightclub performing life, while stage partner Ted, played by Fred Astaire, wants to keep going. Jim decides to become a farmer, going as far as to buying a large one, only to realize he hates farming. But then he gets the idea to remodel the place into a resort that's only open on holidays. And yes, Christmas does play a part with the story, including the introduction of the classic song White Christmas. But it's also a story that does cover the other holidays. We get a showcase of a lot of fun sequences, including Be Careful It's My Heart on Valentine's, Easter Parade on Easter, and my favorite song and dance sequence, Let's Say It with Firecrackers on the 4th of July. So it's easy to put this classic music on year-round without getting a little too much Christmas. This is also a personal choice, as I would understand if some people may not want to watch a golden age black and white musical now, but I really hope you give it a chance to not only watch this, but to consider watching a lot of older movies. After all, Christmas is a nostalgic holiday, so why not check out something that's extremely nostalgic? It was even my grandpa's favorite movie for the holidays, as he popped this on year-round. Many have made the argument that Holiday Inn is an even better movie than Bing's other Christmas movie, White Christmas. I don't know if I fully agree with that, as I do want to cover White Christmas at another point, and I certainly have my thoughts on that. It just so happens that Holiday Inn is easier to watch any time around the year. I would even say that with the Let's Say with Firecracker scene, it could even be justified as a summer watch. So, think about your favorite holiday and pop this on. Chances are, you'll find something you like. Number 4. Ernest Saves Christmas. Another movie I've covered, and admittedly, as a controversial opinion, yes, I am absolutely putting an Ernest movie on the list above some of the classics. Yes, I know the movie is very silly and even stupid, but I can't help but admit that I have a soft spot for Ernest and his Christmas movie. We're back in Florida, this time in Orlando, where Santa Claus, played by Douglas Seale, is searching for a successor with the help of an inept redneck taxi driver, Ernest P. Worrell, played by Jim Varney. And that's honestly all you need to know going into this movie. It's a Disney comedy from the 80s with a character that got a start in commercials. You know what kind of movie you're going into, and you're already going to decide whether or not you even like this idea before going in. It may not be as funny as Ernest Goes to Camp or Ernest Goes to Jail. There is a sweetness with this movie that I find myself having a major soft spot for. I think a lot of it is that I grew up in this strange period where a lot of these random characters could star in a lot of movies. I even covered that when Michael Eisner discovered Ernest, he was actually more popular than Mickey Mouse. but it's also a perfect summer watch as life in Orlando already feels like an everlasting summer. You can tell it's warm out in each of the shots, but the city is still doing its best to appear as Christmassy as possible. You do see Santa standing on the corner ringing a bell. You do see a studio making a science fiction holiday movie. You even see a sleigh flying over the Florida sky. There's not really a lot more to say about Ernest Saves Christmas. You have to go in knowing it's going to be silly, ridiculous, and feature a guy who's honestly not the most annoying. Know what I mean? Number 3. Santa and the Ice Cream Bunny, but with riff tracks. Get ready for one of the strangest things ever made. It's hard to even classify this as a movie because it barely follows the structure of what a movie is supposed to be. Once again, we're in Florida, where Santa's sleigh is stuck in some sand. The rails of the sleigh are slightly covered in sand, and we just have to accept that as permanently stuck. Santa uses his awful singing to lure kids all over just to find animals to help pull the sleigh out. When pigs, horses, and even a guy in a gorilla suit all fail, Santa then proceeds to tell the kids a story about believing in yourself. You'll either get Thumbelina or Jack and the Beanstalk, depending on which cut of the movie you're getting. But even after those segments, which do take up a majority of the film, the quote-unquote ice cream bunny shows up in an old fire truck to take Santa back to the North Pole. While what I said sounds like it came from some kid's sugar rush, that's the premise of this ultra low budget thing. I'm sure you're wondering why I would recommend such a movie. That's when I need to bring up riff tracks. These are the same guys that came from Mystery Science Theater 3000, the show in which they would watch these old B movies from the 50s, 60s, and such, and just make funny commentary throughout. Riff tracks allows them to comment and create commentary for any movie, including this one. I went into a Fathom event years ago at my local Regal Theater that featured them covering Santa and the Ice Cream Bunny, and it's honestly one of the most enjoyable times that I had with my friends. It's like going to a stand-up show that just happened to have a bad movie in the background. I'm happy to say that the special is available to stream from a variety of places. Along with them covering the movie, it also has them covering a couple of Christmas shorts, which tend to focus on Christmas monkeys, kids dressed as dragons, and whichever random things that the Riff Tracks crew were able to dig up. This is probably the best late night summer movie, Christmas-wise, to at least watch with a group of friends. Maybe even more so if you want to make a fun party over it. What else can I say about Santa and the Ice Cream Bunny? Well, leave it to Riff Tracks to figure that out. Number 2, Kiss Kiss, Bang Bang. I had to work in at least one Shane Black movie, as he has a knack for working in the holidays into his stories, even if they're not in the forefront. It's a good thing Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is another movie I've covered before. What we have here is a fun mystery movie about a former thief, Harry, played by Robert Downey Jr., who's taken to Hollywood for a screen test and is saddled with a private investigator, Gay Perry, played by Val Kilmer. The two get caught in a conspiracy involving a dead body, and Harry's childhood crush, now turned actress, Harmony, played by Michelle Monaghan. It's probably best if I don't reveal too much about the story, as the less you know will lead you into wanting to see where everything goes. The story was based on a Brent Halliday pulp story, and the movie really wants to invoke that same feeling. I'll admit that some of the mystery went over my head, and it took me a couple of watches to get into it, but once everything fell into place, I ended up putting Kiss Kiss Bang Bang into my annual Christmas canon list. It helps that because of its Los Angeles setting, it could easily fill in as a summer watch, as once again, Christmas isn't a major factor into the plot. It's really about the phony nature of the entertainment industry and how these two random guys become friends as they try to solve the case. It goes without saying that Shane Black has always been talented at putting the actors together for a really good comedy. Robert Downey Jr. and Val Kilmer are certainly a random set, but they know how to balance each other out, especially with Robert playing the character a little more out of his element and learning how to be an investigator from, well, a real detective. If you're in the mood for something more plot-wise but also fun, I'd say that Kiss Kiss Bang Bang may be up your alley. The Christmas setting just happens to be a nice bonus. Before I name my number one choice, here's a couple of honorable mentions that I didn't think were worthy to go on this list, but I wanted to acknowledge them anyway. The Holiday. The story of these two women that trade their houses for the season is nice, but I really only see it as a half Christmas movie. Trading Spaces. This Eddie Murphy, Dan Aykroyd comedy certainly is very funny and worth the time, but I definitely consider that almost a majority Christmas movie. Bad Santa. I was really on the fence about putting that one on there too, but I know that one can be divisive for some people that don't like the bad language. Lethal Weapon. I think a lot of Shane Black fans were kind of expecting me to put Lethal Weapon on the list, but that's primarily because I never quite got why Lethal Weapon was such a great movie. It's a good cop story, but maybe I'll have to do a two-parter covering that. The Harry Potter series. Yeah, there is a lot of surprisingly Christmas scenes in these movies. I just didn't think I'd have enough time to really dwell into most of them. And to be fair, the Harry Potter movies are still worth watching anytime, just because I happen to really like them. Shazam. It's another Christmas movie that I was also on the fence of putting on this list, but I'd argue that Shazam is definitely much more of a Christmas movie than Batman Returns is. Meet Me in St. Louis. My fiance is going to kill me for not putting this one on the list, but I actually do consider this one a little more of a Christmas movie, and even somewhat of a Halloween movie, as those seasons do play a huge factor in the story. I just don't see it as a good summer watch. The Nightmare Before Christmas. Yeah, another Tim Burton movie that I think a lot of people expected to see on this list, but again, I consider that one more of a Christmas movie than anything. But if you do like to watch that one year-round, go for it. Noelle. The Disney Plus movie with Anna Kendrick itself has a lot of charm to it, but I already see that as repeating a lot of the same beats as Elf, and plus Christmas still plays a giant role in this one, and thus I just don't consider it that good of a summer watch. Okay, with those out of the way, let's get to our number one choice. Number 1, Die Hard. You knew I had to land on this Christmas masterpiece, and yes, I do consider Die Hard to be a Christmas movie. For the uninformed, Bruce Willis is John McClane, a New York City cop who's flying to LA to hopefully reconcile with his wife Holly, and meets up with her at her office where her company is having a party. It also happens to be the target of German thieves, led by the chilling and charming Hans Gruber, played by Alan Rickman. This movie may be over 30 years old, but it has yet to get old. It's a solid, claustrophobic story of an ordinary guy against an army of villains, and there is so much to love here. The action, the comedy, the dialogue, the characters, and even its use of Christmas. It's often ranked on a lot of people's Christmas movies lists for a reason. I do want to do another two-parter series that does dive into the story of Die Hard, as it is fascinating, but I might as well talk about why I do consider it a Christmas movie. It's a story about a guy who wants to come together with his family for the holidays, and it's clear that he and his wife Holly are not in a good spot. John's been so focused on his job back in the East and seems to be reluctant to give up any of that for his family. It takes a group of gun-toting robbers to make him see how quickly he could lose his wife and his own life. But he knows he can use his street smarts to save his life and outmaneuver his way in the building and perhaps put an end to the night. By the end, when he thinks he's gonna die, he wants his last words to tell his family that he loves them. It comes together for Christmas as he wants nothing more than to have a quiet night with the people that he loves. It might have been said before, but I do believe that the holidays are all about being with those you consider family. As an audience, we do want to see John get that second chance. As an action movie, there are lots of parts that I could point out, from the rooftop explosion to the computer bomb that nearly takes down the building, to the final standoff between John and Hans. There's a lot to keep you entertained, and to top it off, it has the body of a Christmas blockbuster that could have worked just as well without the Christmas ties. I just think it happens to work even better with it. The movie was even released in July, and it was still a major hit. If you've seen the movie, you've already got Ode to Joy in your mind, or at least Christmas in Hollis, and you know why. Part of you wants to rewatch it anyway after this. If you haven't, then this is probably the best movie that you could pop on during the summer and munch on some buttery popcorn as you take in some of the craziest stunts and a fun story to go with it. This is a Christmas movie that was born to be a summer movie as well. Well, folks, I really hope you liked that list. But I am curious if there's any other movies you think I left out, you don't agree with my list. I really want to know. Be sure to let me know in my comments on my social media channels if you have other ideas, or if there is just a movie in there that you didn't fully agree with. But for now, I am going to be hard at work ensuring that my Part 2 and Elf episode comes out very soon. I'm going to update that on my social media channels on Facebook and Instagram. But from that point on, I'm going to ensure that I'm going to have a lot more content ready to go. Especially once we hit the November-December time frame when the holidays are in tune. So, until my next episode, I hope you all have a good day, keep summer in the heart, but also keep Christmas in your heart.
Thank you for joining us on this sleigh ride into the magical world of Christmas movies. Check us out for weekly rides into your favorite Christmas classics and their histories. Be sure to give us a positive review on iTunes if you like what you heard. And don't forget to follow us on social media on Facebook and Instagram for updates and special news. Consider subscribing on Patreon in order to help keep the show going and to gain access to some special gifts not available to the public. Merry Monday to all, and to all a good night. See you next week.
Cut. Okay, everybody, that's a wrap.